This is Caleb Kennedy. I'm the Shock Factor Professional Wrestling.
And my name's Casey Rocker. I'm the Dojo Cat himself. Together, we are the business, baby.
And you're watching the 3 Count Podcast.
Do you wanna get live with me? Do you really wanna ride with me? I'm in the club, baby, grind on me. Do you wanna get live with
Welcome
me?
everybody to another great edition of the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you out that mountain called wrestling. And by now, after season 4, like 300 and something episode, a new venue, right? I would just hope you say it with me. I am your Sherpa, because like your tribal chief, acknowledge me. But like every good Sherpa, you gotta have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you can. That's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering. So who's entering? Well, you can find these boys at SOS, DOA, Cherokee Run, AEW, GPW, New South, and District. They work the East Coast. They work the West Coast. They are down south. They are in your neighborhood, but not your friendly neighborhood. But you can find these guys all up and down in the U.S. And here they are, Caleb Trinity, Casey Rocker. What's up, y'all?
We're good.
We're doing good,
How
man.
you doing?
Yeah.
Yo, man, doing great. You know, just
good to
enjoying
hear.
this life, man, you know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yo, so real quick, I want to put like the inside story about like how this all came to be, right? Because we have a mutual friend, right? We have mutual friends. We'll put it
Yeah,
that way.
Friends is an extension.
Yeah. And yeah, so it was awesome. So I was just sitting around, and all of a sudden, like, this name drops in my IG, and it was like, "Hey friend, just want to know, I have some friends that are looking to get out there and get their name out there. So if you could help them." I was like, "Yo, of course, bring them on board." And so I was glad that we were able to make this happen, though.
Yeah, I appreciate you having us
Yeah.
on.
Hell yeah. So, all right. So for our fans who might not know who you are, Caleb, go first. Let the people know who you are.
My name's Caleb Kennedy. I've been wrestling for about 5 years. I want to say there was a little bit of stop and go at the start. So, like, I think combined about 5 years, I would say. Yeah, I started Northwest, moved to the Nightmare Factory about 2 years in, and then been there since.
Nice. Casey, what about you, man?
Well, man, in 2020 is when I started wrestling. I was a part of the first class of the Nightmare Factory, so I was one of Cody's first students in that group. And I've been, as soon as I got out of the camp, which was August through December of 2020, I've been going full time into wrestling. I did about 6 months solos, and then Caleb and I got randomly paired one day on this crazy adventure to Alabama, and ever since then.
Oh,
Are we good?
yeah, you're good.
Are we
now.
good?
Yeah.
We're good
All
now.
Yeah, ever
Ooh.
since then, we've been running wild, baby. We became the business, and there hasn't been any looking back. We've been doing great shows also from like East Coast, West Coast. We've gotten to have some appearances. My NWA. Caleb's done a lot of AEW. So we're pretty much just all over trying to meet as many people as possible, make good friends.
Yo, and it is funny though, man, because like one thing that you know, like you brought up, right? Like you started in 2020, Casey. I started in 2020 as well. And I started January of 2020, and then the shutdown happened in
Whoa.
March.
Rough.
It was rough.
Yeah.
I was like, bro, this is not. I was like, you know what? And it was one of those things where I had to test myself a little bit, because I was like, you know what, man? Like, I went out there, and mind you, like full transparency with y'all, like I'm turning 39 next year, so I was like, yo, try it out. I was like, I gave it the college try. It's just not meant to happen, because there's a full fucking pandemic that just told me I'm not allowed to do this, and I was like, nah, we're gonna play this out and see how far we can take this.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I've been meeting a lot of people who started during the pandemic. Either like they did. I met a lot of people in the January who, and especially when they got told, oh, we can't do anything with it, a lot of them fell off. So it's really cool to see people who stuck around, and it's an interesting experience to share, being like wrestlers to come in during the pandemic.
Yo, 2020 was a definite trial for me, because I ended up like coming back at the end of May and like really pushing for it, right? And then I kind of took a step back, because obviously when you're not training, you know, you're not really know what you're doing. So I obviously took a step back, and then I thought about quitting, and then my friend told me I shouldn't quit, and then like I was like, all right, bet, I'm gonna keep going. And then I tore my abdomen.
Oh, rough.
And so I was out for 8 weeks. I was like, bruh, 2020 was like clearly telling me like, hey, yo, don't do this. And I was like, I can't listen to 2020. I got to keep
No.
going.
That's so
But
funny. I had just started picking up steam when the pandemic hit for me, because
oh,
I had started 2017.
mm,
Right after I graduated high school, I started training. Stopped in 2018 for about a year and came back. And Luther was training me, and he like really pushed me on the shows, got me going, got my everything going for me. And then pandemic hit. And like right before the pandemic, he was like, "Hey, I just got signed to AEW, and I'm going to Georgia for their school. You should come with me." I was like, "Oh yeah!" Like I had a bunch of personal stuff fall through, and so like I had this house that like I owned a house at like 20 years old, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, fuck it. I sold the house and used the money to move.
nice. This is great. So the Nightmare Factory was home to both y'all.
Mhm.
Um, and I can only imagine, like, with QT, Vari Morales, right up there, down there.
Oh yeah.
My
Uh,
dude,
yo,
I love
so
Barry.
many
Vari.
people. So
Don't
many
tell him, but we
people.
love him.
You know what's so funny though is that like, so I had Vari on the show,
Oh
right
yeah.
before he like was doing more. He was doing a lot of work with AEW Dark, and we
Mhm.
brought him on, and I think I was his first interview in full English. And the funny thing is I was like, oye, amigo, ¿quieres hablar en español? We can do that too. And he was just like, no, we got to do it in English. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. We're doing it in English. But it was funny. So getting to know him and then finding out that he became one of like the trainers over at the
Mhm.
Name Factory, I was like, hey, yo, big ups for that man. So I was definitely excited for him. So it was a good thing for him. But what's it like getting into Nightmare Factory? Because like, I know QT came down from Monster Factory and then like he opened up the school and then like the ball started rolling from there. So there had been like a lot of nerves like getting into that area.
So I came in thinking I was going to be in KC's camp. There was 3 of us. So when we were training with Luther, we had like 5 main guys, and then he sat us all down. We always went to, I don't know if you know what Sherry's are. They're a restaurant, I think, just in the Northwest.
Mm.
But we'd always go to these places called Sherry's after training. And he sits us all down and he's like, "Hey, guys should come to Georgia." And like, you could kind of look across the room, like, why, like, some of them were like, "Why would we move to Georgia?" And I was just like, "Bet." Another guy named Parker Lee, I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Mm-mm.
He was like
Yeah.
the other main one who was like, "That dude, I'm down. We'll go." And then a third one came down. He ended up quitting wrestling, but that's okay. That happens. But yeah, so I forgot where I was going with that. I'm not
You were
gonna.
you were talking about how you made the incredible journey to Nightmare Factory.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I completely spaced where I was going with that. And so yeah, we came down. We'd had that conversation in February, and I quit my job, sold my house, and then the pandemic hit. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I kind of just hung out. I worked at my dad's restaurant for a little while, and then moved down to the factory a few weeks before that camp started. And up until we got there, we thought we were in Casey's camp, like the first camp that they announced.
Yeah.
We thought we were in that, and then QT's like, "You guys have been wrestling for 2 years each. I'm not putting you in a beginner's camp." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's fair. I'll take that."
Yeah. Just prolonged our meeting, man.
We just prolonged it.
Well, it is something though, because like it's funny how you mentioned that, right, Caleb? Like the one thing is because I know for me, I was living in Maryland, right, when I started, and then I moved to the Northeast, right? So I'm up in the Massachusetts area now, and I'd been wrestling in Maryland for like, well, shit, 3.5 years now. And so when I moved up here, it was like a whole new thing to like learn, right? And then like networking and stuff like that obviously matters. But it was so funny because I was like, yo, I'm working my way around, talking to people. I knew certain places that I already wanted to be a part of. So like I was like looking for those places. But when I started training at a school, one person was like, yo, why would you want to come to a beginner course if you've been working for almost 4 years? And I was like, yeah, that sounds really stupid when you say it that way. So where do I go from here? And they're like, well, you can come to the other classes that we have. And I was like, bet. So I started showing up. It was like, yeah, I was like, well, I figured everybody's because it's the thing, right? Like everybody trains differently,
Yep.
so you're like learning from different people, and you're like, well, I'm gonna go do the beginner course because that just makes sense. And they're like, no, you're stupid. Just go ahead
Hop on
and
in.
come in, say hi, but then you go jump in the advanced course. I'm like, but I'm not advanced. They're like, get in the advanced course. I'm like, all right, I'll go that way.
I'll see you there.
You're right. You're
And
right.
like, we've wrestled all over, and like when you wrestle people who are like trained in different regions, there's differences. Like, for example, that's just a kind of thing I noticed right when I like moved. Like, I went from Pacific Northwest to the Southeast. I can't tell you which one does which, but I felt like a lot of people in one would call it like the universal, and a lot of people in the other would call it the international.
Yeah.
And like just stuff like that. Like the terming's different. All the moves, like a lot of moves, I feel like people take differently in different spots. People like to really hit each other in the Northwest. People don't like that in the Southeast. Like,
you know what's funny is I've heard that, right? I have a friend who is actually in the Atlanta region. He's wrestling, and he's from the Northeast. Well, the Mid-Atlantic. We'll put that. We'll be fair. He's from the Mid-Atlantic. And he said he locked up with his first person in Tennessee. And the guy was like, lighten up, brother. And he's like, it's a tie-up. What do you mean?
Hey, they wrestle in Tennessee, baby.
can we ask who that friend is? Do we know him?
Oh, do you guys know who Ben Bishop is?
Yep. Yeah, I've met Ben.
Yeah, BT double B.
He was on all the district shows with us.
Yeah.
I love Ben, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He's a sarcastic dude. I love him. Yeah.
So he started actually training at the place that I trained at, like, like I was thinking like a year before I did, and it might have been 6 months before I did. He was actually my first match.
Oh, nice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we did a taping together, and he was my first match. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of BT double B, you know, the 6'12", 15% of a metric ton.
I actually have a pretty good first match story. I feel like I can tell most people my first match and they can't top it. So I had started training for 3 months, and we had this 24-hour charity show. And my coach at the time, and I was getting coached by this guy when I was in Oregon these last couple months. His name's Ricky Gibson. He's half of Midnight Heat.
Okay.
He looked at me. He's like, "Hey, you're gonna be at the show is called Hunger Slam." He's like, "You gonna be at the Hunger Slam?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, I was gonna go help out because like they were very big on like you went to the school shows and helped out. Like, even if you couldn't work, like you went to shows, you helped set up the ring, like you paid your dues. They're very big on that, which I'm glad. I was like, "Yeah, I was gonna be there, help out with what was needed." He's like, "Cool, you're booked." I'm like, "I haven't had a training match," and he's like, "We'll figure it out." And so I was like, "Okay, cool." And like, they started having me have training matches. Like, no, I had my first training match the night before the show. Like, and we were just doing matches, and someone's like, "Caleb hasn't had a match yet," and they're like, "Yeah," and they're like, "He's on the show tomorrow," and they're like, "Okay, yeah, get in there." It was on the fly too. But then like they had me in a battle royal to start, and then they had me reffing matches, and then like they're like, "We'll have you wrestle around like the 3:00 mark, like in the morning when no one's there, like just to fill time, because like if it's a bad match, no one's gonna see it." I'm like, "Okay."
Right.
These two guys were having an evening gown match, and one had to back out and like go off and do something, and so this kid from my school comes and grabs me. He's like, "Hey, you ready for your first actual match?" I'm like, "Yeah, what is that?" And he just hands me a dress and he said, "Put this on." And I'm like,
welcome to the business, kid.
yeah. He's like, "Welcome to the business." And so we went out and have an evening gown match, and I'm literally like, it's in front of 8 people, and I'm laughing the whole time, like, because it's not what I expected for my first match. And Caleb Kennedy is my shoot name as well. And like I had thought of some work name. I don't even remember what it was. And I told the ring announcer, and they'd always put over Kennedy, like, because Ken Kennedy, like, I'd walk in the ring, they'd be like, "Kennedy." And then he told me, like, never change your name. I was like, okay. So like I wanted to try something out that day. And I'm coming to the ring in the dress, waiting for like my cool name that wasn't that great to be announced. And he's like, Caleb, 1080. And I look at him, he looks at me and winks, and then goes into the mic a second time. He's like, 1080.
Okay, that's why that keeps happening.
Yeah, you've noticed when we go back to the Northwest, that happens like all the time.
Yeah, I never.
That's why.
I didn't know
it was
why
a rib.
Okay.
That's funny though. I like that a lot. That's actually really good.
And I had like 8 matches that night too.
Damn.
Like my first.
That's fun.
There was no better way to start than.
Yeah.
Just off the rip, 8 matches in. That's crazy. What about you, Casey? What was your first match like?
Well, my first match technically is the factory showcase, and they put me in the battle royal, and I knew that I was not. I was like, all right, there's I think there was like maybe 15, 20 people in the rumble, and that's just me guesstimating. But I knew I had to do something if I wanted to like stand out a little. So Preston Vance thought it'd be really funny if I got power bombed out of the ring for my first. So I super kicked one guy out. Immediately afterwards, like the biggest guy in the match comes over, guts me, pulls me in, up, and he power bombs me on to these 2 other guys who are having their first match. So that was my first technical one. My first indie match though was like in front of was also just so happens to be Caleb's first Southeast indie show as well. I wrestled one of the other graduates from the factory, and I did like a singles match in front of 5 people, and honestly, I've grown so much from there. I watched it back the other day. What a cringe show.
Did you really watch that?
Have you ever watched back your old first matches?
Yes. Yes, I have.
It is the worst.
Yep.
Yeah. But
I look back at my matches now and I'm like, bro, I'm terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about
wrestler, right?
Yeah, and I'm not even talking about matches that I had like I'm talking about matches I had like last week. I just look at him like, God, you're a terrible kid. Learn to
really
work.
People who take it most serious, like they're never really gonna enjoy what they've done.
No, we're all critical of ourselves.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a match where I'm like, you know what? That was really good. No, I look at matches and I'm like, bruh, you should burn your boots.
You used to watch back every match and like try to like learn from it, or you kind of know like specific spots to go back to, or like how do you go back and kind of review your work?
Yeah, I go back and I just watch I will go back and watch a match and I just watch it one time through, and then I'll like try to critique it at the waypoint I'm trying to, because I feel like I watch other people's work more critically than I watch my own, because like I think I've seen my matches like a few times, so I'm just like I don't want to go back and relive some of the moments that I had.
Yeah,
but I think that's also what's going to be super necessary as well too. It's one of those things where you're like watching back, watching footwork, watching like how the crowd reacts to certain spots. Can you move them? Can you figure out where like something might work better? There's a couple of things that I try to figure out. I think the one thing that I hate doing though is I hate watching space or spots where I know like. So, for instance, right, I'll put it out there. I worked at a show. I did a drop kick, and when I did the drop kick, I did a shotgun drop kick from the second rope. And when I hit, I didn't fully land on my back. Actually, I hit it high up on my neck and just knocked myself out.
Ooh.
Now I was out for like 5 or 10 seconds.
Oh, see.
And it was like,
yeah.
And then watching it back, I was like, yeah. Oh, bruh, like I don't like watching those matches because I'm like no, that's because I know it's coming, and then I just I go back to remembering like, oh, I don't remember what happened in this spot like after this, or I do remember like parts of it. I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of came back to me. Not that I've knocked myself enough times to do that, but but I do like watching matches where it's like I got to work with a more veteran dude and kind of see like how they take care of me like during the matches, because I think that's important too, that teaches you that leadership side of things that you should be learning.
Yeah, no, I actually had a situation. It was I think 2 years ago. It was like a Christmas show or something. And I was wrestling a guy. He's one of our good friends. He's from Chile. His name is Pedro Pablo. Love the guy.
That's our dude.
Yeah, I love him. Like, and I always say that because, like, before I tell the story, I'm like, I love Pedro. All right, but no, he speaks primarily Spanish. So, like, this is his first time coming to America and like working and like working with more English-speaking wrestlers. So, when have you ever wrestled somebody who? Well, you're bilingual, aren't you? So
I am, yeah. So I could kind of.
So, but when I was working with him, we got told like to take it home. So I told him like, I said, hey, go home. He gave me no indication like that he heard me, didn't say yeah, didn't do anything. So I was like, all right, whatever. I guess we're just gonna finish this match. And we'll get punished for whatever.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I go to float over his shoulder because that's what he wanted me to do in the beginning. But he did hear the take it home, and he wanted to hit me with a reverse DDT. Instead, just when I was going over his shoulder, he dropped me down, just straight on my head. I was
It was
out.
rough.
And when I watch it, like I don't from the moving me to the ring to right before I go into the curtain, I don't like have any recollection. Then a fan yelled some absurdity at me, and then I came back too. Interesting times. I fell right over.
Side note, they be yelling some rough stuff at us here in the South.
Yeah, if you haven't wrestled in Georgia, you got it. It's great.
Yeah,
Oh, I've heard.
it's pretty
From a
rough.
few different people I've heard.
Yeah.
The crazy thing was when I took that drop kick and I knocked myself out. I remember, like, you know how like everything just went black for a quick second. At least it thought it was a quick second.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing the crowd like clap into it, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta start getting up." And like, I get up and I put my hand on one of my opponents because it was a triple threat match. I put my hand on his shoulder, and he bumped, and I was like, I didn't even touch this, man. I was like, I have the world's strongest force, but now I gotta play this off, right? So I go to pick him up, and he tries to pick me up for a power slam, and I kick out, like I just start wiggling like crazy, and then I put him in a clinch, in a full Muay Thai clinch, and I was like, I'm gonna let you know right now, I'm kind of loopy. I have no idea where we are. And he goes, just hit me. And I was like, threw some shots. He's like, pick me up. And so I put him in a power slam because that was supposed to be the idea for the match was supposed to be the British Bulldog power slam match. The only way you can win is by hitting a running power slam.
Okay.
And so I put him on my shoulder, and like I go to run, and then he pushes me off. He posts me, and I just lay into post. And what was supposed to happen is the other two guys were going to wrestle back and forth and try to. One was supposed to take the other person with the power slam. That ended up happening, and then I peeled off. But yeah, I was like, thank God this was at the very end of this match because it would be some crazy shit if this was in the beginning.
I remember something like that happened to me in one of my first matches. I was working this real big guy, and the cutoff was like he moved on something, just clotheslined me. And I not knocked out, but I got knocked pretty good on that. But I was like too green to really speak up, so I'm like struggling through the heat. And then like I'm pretty sure I was concussed too. Like I'm sitting there after like, oh my gosh, and like someone was like checking on me, like good. I'm like, yeah, like you remember the match? I'm like, yeah, some of it. And he's like, because like I told him like, I was like, I think other than the Hunger Slam, I was like 3 matches in. Like Hunger Slam, because the Hunger Slam was the only match or show I worked in my first stint. Like I had stopped for a year and then came back, and Luther had me just immediately start working. And so like that was 3rd match in there. And so he was like, yeah, like you could work on like being looser in the heat. And then I was like, honestly, dude, like I don't remember the heat.
I don't remember that.
He's like, were you good? I was like, yeah, I rocked my head on that clothesline. And he's like, dude, you should have said something. I was like, I don't know. Like I was just super green and just didn't speak up.
I was like, you've been looser on the heat. Like, how'd that go?
How'd that go?
Wait,
how was the heat? I don't remember it.
It was kind of cool to me. Was there a flame? I have no idea what we're talking about. No, so I was gonna say, like, we've all been kind of like talking to each other about like how we got into the business stuff. But what drove you into really wanting to get into the business, though?
Are we talking like us as a tag team or like actually wrestling? Because like that gets confusing.
Why not both?
Why not both? Okay. I can start.
Yeah, the first or second time too.
Yeah, we'll tell our stories of like how we got into wrestling, and then we'll tell the story of how the business started, because I think that's a funny story.
Okay.
Yeah,
so I started watching wrestling. I don't know. I was 7, 8. It was kind of something I knew I wanted to do, but when I was about 14, my mom started taking me to shows called DOA Pro Wrestling. I don't know. Oh yeah, we talked about us being on it. So she was taking me to DOA every month, and so when I graduated high school, I hit them up. I was like, hey, where would I go to start training? And they sent me to this monthly seminar from this guy named Dr. Cleaver. And he only trained once a month though. And so he told me, he's like, hey, if you're serious about it, go to Dub C, which was a school in Salem, Oregon. I was living in Forest Grove, Oregon, which was about 2 hours away. And so I was driving 2 hours Monday, Wednesday, and Friday back and forth, just training. And then, yeah, that's how I got started.
What about you, Casey? You over here laughing about it?
Well, no, I was like, well, that was the first time.
Yeah, that was the first time.
This is, yeah, I don't know if I don't want to mention too much more.
No, we'll own the second time.
We'll own the second time? Because
we'll own. Okay, we're gonna talk about the second time. So, I don't think I've ever talked about this on a podcast before. Most people know
exclusive.
Know this. Yeah, this is exclusive. You're getting this for the first.
Let's go.
So I had a high school sweetheart, right? And she hated me wrestling when I first got into it. Like she was kind of like, oh, like yeah, it'd be cool. And then I was gone three days a week, and like the rest of the time I was home, I was just exhausted. And she was like, oh, I'm good. Whatever. End up stopping. We got engaged and then married at like 20. And then it just didn't work out. So like it ended up not working out. And I went from like us splitting up in like the beginning of August to back into wrestling at the end of August. Like it was 2 weeks in between. And everyone was kind of like, hey, pump the brakes. Like, are you sure you want to like just jump back into this? I'm like, yeah, like fuck it, you know?
Yeah.
We ball. And then here I am 3 years later. So, or no, 4 years. 4 years.
Yeah, still balling.
Still balling.
It's weird. This is one of those things, right? And before I get to you, Casey, it's one of those things where it's like everybody had something they wanted to be when they were growing up, right? Or even when they're like, I don't want to say when they're growing up because I still haven't grown up. I'm just a giant man child. Anyway, but everyone wanted to be something, right? Pro athlete, pro basketball player, pro football player. Yeah, whatever, right? Something in the sports world, right? And for me, like pro wrestling was like all I wanted to do. And while it took like a long time to get here, I look back at some of my friends or some of the people that I went to high school with, and they're like, I want to be an NBA. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, smoking crack. Like, it's two different professions. I mean, one could lead to you doing the other profession, but we're not doing the same thing. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Go ahead, Casey. Let's hear this journey though of yours.
All right. So I would say mine's not as chipper in the beginning, but I feel like everything turns out well in the end. So up until 2020, I actually never even went to a live show. I've grown up watching wrestling since I was like 4. My mom's from Detroit, and her family's like they're huge into wrestling. Midwest area, they're pretty big. So I grew up watching it my entire life. My dad was never really into like taking me to events. He thought they were a waste of money and everything. So when I turned 20, I decided because my parents were divorced and everything, and my mom was going through a second divorce, and it was really hard on us. So I ended up seeing the Chris Jericho Cruise Part 2. So I told my mom, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna let's both go on this. We both need to like take a journey and like just have a light at the end of the tunnel, something to look forward to. We went on this cruise, and it was the first one where AEW was on it. We had the first AEW title change where it was Hangman and Kenny won the belts. So that was pretty cool. It was cool. It was just a great all around experience, and it was my first time ever seeing live pro wrestling. And it was on a boat. It was just everything was great. The fans. This is like AEW coming up still, so everything was like just insane like energy. And I looked at my mom when we were getting off. I said, "This is what I want to do for the rest of my life." And I'd been telling her that my entire life, like up to that point. And she always told me I needed to have a backup plan, or I did think more realistically. But when we were walking out the boat, she said that you need to pursue it. So that was like my final, like, all right, let's go. So I actually originally signed up for flatbacks. I put in a $500 non-refundable to cement my place. And then like a week later, I came home from work and I was just scrolling through my phone as people do. I saw a an advertisement from Cody's Instagram, and he was like, "We're opening up a new school. We need 30 people. Put an application, and we'll pick who comes in." So I put an application in. Literally didn't think anything of it, because why would Cody Rhodes school pick me? And then, long story short, I got a call like a week before I'm supposed to start at Flatbacks. And they said that I was accepted into the Nightmare Factory. So I had to choose between leaving home in Florida, which is where I'm originally from, and then, or I could move to Atlanta and pursue wrestling with, honestly, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. So, of course, it was a no-brainer. I had to go to the Cody facility. And honestly, it's been a life-changing experience. I got to meet incredible people who are like family. Caleb's like my brother. I've gotten to train under Ernest the Cat Miller, who's become just definitely a father figure for me. So no regrets into that. And there was something you were talking about earlier, and what I wanted to bring up also was, it seems like everybody has to go through a breakdown to reach a breakthrough. So I feel like in that 2020, I'm trying to pick and choose what I want to share, but I went through my biggest breakdown. So I feel like right now I'm on my journey to my biggest breakthrough. And I feel like, Caleb's in that same situation. And I want to take a moment just to realize that I think there's something special about people like us. And and I'm getting lost in it because I'm getting all like in my feelings.
I got you. I'll take that.
No, man, because like on the real though, man, like this is what I'm and this podcast is one of those things where we can kind of be like that. I totally 100% hear you, right? So 2006, while y'all was being young, I had joined the military, right? Okay. And then I was in the Air Force. I got deployed overseas, right? So I can share this with y'all. I haven't shared this with you guys, but I'm gonna share it with y'all now. Y'all here, and even on the show, I haven't talked about this. But when I got deployed to Iraq, right, in December, my mom and dad had split. Some things that happened in their relationship. We're not going to share that, right? And then my at the time girlfriend broke up with me while I was overseas, so I got the Dear John email because we didn't get Dear John letters. We on computers and stuff. So anyway, so I was on my low, and I came, and I thought at that moment, I was like, bro, if a mortar hit me today, I do not care. And I was low, and then I came back. And then my ex and I, we kind of got back. We kind of rekindled some things. Kind of thought it was going to work out. Obviously, it did not, because I'm married to a different woman, and we have a kid, right? But I was at the lowest point, man, where I was like, I got to a point where I was like drinking every night, just to the point to where I would black out, right? Because I was like, I just don't have a care at this point, right? I definitely hear like that part about where you hit the low and you hit low, and then one day I was like, just happened to be watching wrestling, and I was like, I really think I should pursue this thing. And then like I finally, something clicked, and I was like, you know what, like I don't want to be angry no more. I don't want to drink no more like heavily, right? I just want to be happy. So I kept watching wrestling, and then things kind of kept going. And then I met my wife. I met this woman, right, who ended up becoming my wife. And then a few years later, like a ton of years later, I should say, when I was living in Maryland, I was like, yo, I want to be a pro wrestler. And I found a friend who was working the dark arts, if you guys know what that means. And then eventually I made the leap into pro wrestling, and then I haven't looked back since. And mentally, it has been a godsend for me. Like, it's a weird stress relief that you get on the show, right? Or like that you get on the shows, you get in practice, right? You get to talking to people who are also a part of the same mission. It is like, I just want to be the best I can be and have fun, entertain, right? And just be outlandish, right? It's one of those things where it's like, I definitely hear where you're coming from though, when you're talking about hitting like rock bottom and just, you're not staying there, because as soon as you start realizing, you're like, oh, I'm on the up and up. And then you just have this big breakthrough and you're like, this is amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Because honestly, if you're going to share all that, I was like, I feel like I've never been one to want to share this story, but Caleb shared a story. Now you shared this. I'll give you like the full. So February, I decided like 100% I want to do pro wrestling. And then in March, it was a guy who was like a brother to me. His name's Keaton. And Keaton actually passed away in March because of COVID. So, but before he died, I had actually told him, I was like, hey, I've decided this is what I'm going to do with my life and stuff. he was also a drug addict. So like he had overdosed on before, and he ended up having like heart issues. So he had like an 8-year-old heart, caught COVID, and then just had a cardiac event. Um, but anyways, Keaton, I told Keaton like this is what I wanted to do, and he was very adamant on like, well, like you need to get out of you need to get out of this town. You need to go pursue your dreams. Like I believe in you. And then for him to when he died the next month, honestly, the way I look at things like this is like you can move forward and you can hate life and like kick yourself while you're down, or you can try to honor the people that you carry like in your heart. And like, so my goal is I want to honor Keaton, and I'm going to chase this dream relentlessly. And I don't see myself failing. I don't believe that I can fail. So everything I do is in honor of him and some of the closer family members I had that have believed in me and aren't going to see me make it, but they will.
It's one of those things too. You can't look at it like I
No,
can't
you gotta be
fail,
positive.
because at the end of the day, like you're already like it sounds weird to say it this way, but you're already there. Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah, I've
levels.
already won.
There's levels to where you want to get to, right? But
Mhm.
your goal was ultimately I want to honor those by living a
Mhm.
passion and living into pro wrestling and going into pro wrestling, and now you're doing that. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
you can't look at it as like, oh well, it's
Oh yeah.
a failure part to me. Now
No, and
you're already here.
yeah, and I actually, it's funny that you say that, because my grandfather actually came down to visit me, and he's not in great health, so this is like, realistically, you never know, it could be the last time. So I wanted him to see me wrestle one time, so I brought him to a practice, and he saw me do a practice match. He got to watch some of my matches on YouTube, and he like pulled me aside, and we had like a little one-on-one talk, and he was like, I just want to let you know that like I remember you telling me when you were 4 that this is what you wanted to do, and I remember you growing up and pretending to be these wrestlers and getting to see you in that ring. Like you've lived your dream and you're living your dream, and I'm proud of you. Like you made it. And I think honestly, nothing will ever. I'm not gonna leave this world with regret. I feel very positive about everything, and I feel like I chose my right journey, and I think I'm on the right path. And I think we all are.
And you know what's funny, man? Because like you mentioned that you had to make a choice between like flatbacks and a Nightmare Factory. I mean, I don't know. Cody and Sean are friends, right? I mean, maybe you can still slide back
Oh
over and be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, can I get some
yeah,
lessons over
yeah,
at flatback?"
yes, yeah.
Sean
Honestly,
Spears has been
it's
at the
all like
factory.
yeah, I would say we at this point we met some people. Yeah, we've run into them. It's great, and honestly, I meet a lot of his students now. So from talking with them, they got a great school going. I've wrestled his kids. They're all great in the ring. They have great fundamentals. So either way, it would have been a great choice.
You want to
But
hear?
I'd
Let
meet
me.
Caleb.
So I'll share this with you. This is crazy, and it'll be the first time I share
Yeah.
this on this show too.
Oh
So,
yeah.
hey, you guys, and it's a great story. So it's kind of funny how this is all gonna link back, right? Trust me, you guys will see. So I was working for Kraft Mac and Cheese back in like 2017, I think it was
Yeah.
2016, 2017.
How-
Anyway, so I met this person, right?
Mhm.
Named Allison, right? So Allison and I, we're in Chicago, right? She's from DC, I'm from the Baltimore team, but we meet in Chicago and we kick it off. We have a good friendship, right? And we have a lot of fun. We joke back and forth, right? Eventually she gets offered a job in Orlando, right? So she leaves DC and she moves to Orlando, and then she did something different, right? She just ultimately left like Kraft altogether. So randomly, I start seeing her with this dude. I'm like, yo, who's this guy? I was like, this guy looks familiar. Mind you, I'm just keep looking. I was like, that's not who I think it is. And sure enough, I hit her up when I was like, Ayo, is your boyfriend's name Matt? And she was like, yeah, he's really great at flatbacks. I was like, my friend is dating Tyler Breeze.
That's so cool.
And not only did they date, they're married. They just had a kid together, by the way. Congratulations, Allison and Tyler. Oh, Matt. But it was so great. Like, talk about the small world of like professional wrestling. Like, I never imagined that would be something, but yeah, it was definitely funny. I was like, I've been meaning to want to share the story, and then you just gave me the prime opportunity to do so.
There you go. See, the business is always giving. That's one thing we've always been very big on. We're very giving people.
Well, the thing is, what I love about this business is that you're always one step away from meeting that person who's next.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yes.
That's why I love it.
Because you never know who's gonna take off, and like, you never know when it'll happen.
Yeah, well, it's not even just that. It's like you're always one step from you're like always connection away from knowing that person who was like a part of either AEW or NWA or WWE or MLW or New Japan,
Yeah.
New Japan Strong, right? You're always one connection away from that person.
Yep.
And it's a blast to see. I love watching I love watching other people succeed. And people are always like, yeah, people say that all the time, but they don't really mean it. No, like I genuinely mean it because it's like this show, right, has given me such a big opportunity to go out and meet so many different people and network
Yep.
so much that like
Yeah.
I can get dropped into and I don't mean to sound braggadocious when I say this, but I get dropped in different areas all the time and I'm like, I'm so happy because I'll meet somebody like, bro, what's up? And they're like, oh, holy shit, you're here. Like, what's up?
Yeah, I've been telling Caleb, I was like, I like how now, just because of how much traveling we've done, it's like it doesn't matter what locker room we're in, we always know somebody,
we
and
know
there's always like that reaction of like, oh my god, you're here. It's usually us. Like nobody knows that where we're gonna be.
And I
But
feel
love
like I've seen a lot of people just like they stay within their like couple hours of home and they build their name like that way. And Casey and I have been the opposite. We have just hopped in cars, we've driven all over the place, we've jumped back and forth between West Coast and here. Like
That's how we started, man.
yeah.
So how did you guys form as a team?
Okay.
I know you said
Yeah.
Bama. I heard that part, but
So
Yeah. Well,
trying to remember what was the so
hey, let's just start with the freight train.
yeah, do you know who Freight Train is?
I don't know who Freight Train is.
So
Let's not skip that.
have you ever heard of
I
$5
love him.
Wrestling? It was run by
Yeah.
Cole Cabana was heavily involved.
Yes.
Okay.
I have.
The Freight Train was like their guy.
Okay.
And we love us some Freight Train.
Yeah, and I had just moved in with Caleb, and when I first moved in, he was like showing me some like different like some of the wrestling he likes, whatnot, and we were also living with Parker Lee at that time, and Caleb and Parker started talking about this promotion called $5 Wrestling, and I was like,
good.
what is that? So of course they had to show me. So my favorite show they had was the death match dance party.
And $5
But,
wrestling
honestly,
is not good. If you haven't seen $5 wrestling, it's not good. It is bad wrestling.
Yeah, it's purposely bad wrestling. Like they know it. Like all the wrestlers know it. Everybody knows it. It's just for fun. But anyways, Freight Train has just a great personality. He's hilarious on the microphone, and it was just a big favorite of Caleb and ours. So one of our friends from the Nightmare Factory, his name is Nasty Leroy. He used to be the leader of the Nasty team.
You know
before Caleb
Nasty?
took over.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever
So
run into
Caleb,
Nasty, tell him about Caleb Kennedy.
that.
He will get so mad. I love
So
Nasty was so much.
Nasty was teaming with Freight Train, and I saw it, so I sent it to Caleb. I said, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And Caleb was like, "Should we just like see if we can tag along so we can go meet Freight Train?"
And Donnie Primetime was training with us a lot, so I knew he was a big thing in New South, so I talked to Donnie. I was like, "Hey, we want to go and just watch Freight Train and Nasty team up." He's like, "Really? That's why you want to go the 4 hours?" I'm like, "Yeah, we'll own that." He's like, "Okay." So he lets us ride up with him, and then another tag team named the New Age Villains. I almost called them the New Age Outlaws. I
know.
I almost said
I
it,
almost
stuck
do.
to it. The New Age Villains had showed up, and so he randomly grabbed us. He was like, "Hey, do you guys want to have a tag match?"
Yeah.
And we were like, "Sure, why not?" And so we had a tag match, kind of clicked, and the rest was history.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how did you settle on the name? How did you settle on the name of the business?
I don't know. Is it shareable?
Yeah, we share it. So I was tagging with Parker Lee at the time, and then we kind of added Casey for one show. Like there was one show where it was the three of us at a School of Morton in front of like 8 people.
Yeah.
And like we had talked about being a trios because we were all living together. And on that road trip, I understand why you're kind of like, I'm telling the story and then remembering parts, and now I'm understanding why Casey was like, can you edit the podcast before it airs? If there's something that's like,
Oh, I mean, we could, and then I'll share. We can edit certain things out if you want them out. But
You
we
know,
could definitely, I could definitely
No.
tell you, I could tell you a
No.
story.
actually,
I can
yeah,
tell you
you're
a story
right. You're right.
post that I had to do, and you'll laugh about it.
We're just gonna own it. So basically,
I feel like I know where this is going.
we kept making jokes about like, "Hey, do you respect the business?" This was on the car ride with Donnie, but like, they were
How
always
often
about
do you
jerking
respect the
off.
business?
They were always about jerking. Like it was always
Yeah.
like, if you heard the jokes, you know they were about jerking off.
Yeah.
And so we get back to the apartment. We kept making those jokes to Blake. I'm like, I wake up every morning. I respect the business before I do anything else. And then we're on the way to this trios thing, and Parker is like, I called him his shoot name a couple times on accident. I slipped up there. I realized
I
after I
wasn't
did
gonna say anything.
I knew Parker for 2 years before his work name was Parker. So he was like, "What if we just go by the business?" And then we did one show as a trios, and then Parker had some stuff kind of going off from as single. So we ended up just Casey and I doing tag, and Parker ended up doing singles. But yeah, so Parker Lee was a big part of the name. I'll give him that.
Oh man, if he watches this,
If he watches it, he's posting it. He's like, I've been
he's
saying
gonna be
it from day
posting that.
one.
Bet. Well, all right. So let me ask you the next question, which is
Yeah.
one of my favorite questions to ask a lot of people. Right? What's one of the hardest lessons you've had to learn being in the business?
When to keep my mouth shut. So I am a big jokester.
Yeah, you
and
are.
Like, and like, there's times where I'll be quiet. Like, there's been moments during this interview where I'm just quiet because you guys are just talking. I let you guys do your thing. But then there's times where someone will say something I'm out of nowhere, just a smart ass remark.
Yeah, Caleb's real out of pocket.
And sometimes, like, it's not even like an intentional thing. It just slips out. And like, when I'm at my like shoot job, it's really just out there because I don't care. Like, at least with wrestling, like, I know, like, okay, I need to like have somewhat of a filter. But like, it's slipped through a few times with wrestling. And yeah, I'm not gonna name any names, but like, I've learned from like some big names, like, keep your fucking mouth shut, dude.
Yeah.
And like, there's no heat. Like, it's not like I have heat with anyone. But I've learned from some big names, like,
yeah.
And it's always like a very like, hey, you're a good kid. Just don't be a smart ass. Like, no, pick when to be a smart ass is like one of my lessons I've learned.
I like that. I like that lesson. What about you, Casey?
Oh, I'm still currently trying to learn how to get the hot tag. He's like, this isn't the place.
I don't know. Casey with the hot tag? I don't know.
I don't know. Caleb said I have to bench more than him first.
Nice. I like that.
Man. As far as one of the lessons, I think it's sometimes like knowing like it's more of like the business part, because I'm always very worried that like when I talk to people, it's gonna come across disingenuous, or like maybe because you know how you're in the business, you know, it's like, oh, does he want something from me? Does he just want a booking? But it's like, I'm genuinely in this business to make, like, I want to have fun, promote like Caleb and I's pro wrestling and like how we do things, and hopefully people like that. But in the process, I want to make good friendships, because I feel like on the day where you hang up the boots, do you want just a bunch of old coworkers that used to know you, or do you want to have like actual brothers and like friendships?
Yeah.
So I guess my biggest lesson I'm still trying to learn is like how to make sure I always come across as a genuine guy, and make sure my intentions are clear.
Also, bonus lesson we've learned. Cody Rhodes once said,
oh god,
like, someone did something and like they had like a funny like spot idea, but then they like half-assed did it. Like,
oh no,
they did it to the point where like they kind of did it, but like not really. And so Cody's like, if you're gonna do stuff like that, you gotta do it. And he's like, if you're gonna get pregnant, get full pregnant.
Yeah, I know who that was. There's a couple twins that did it, and then told that same story
Oh, did they say the
happened.
same thing?
Not on this podcast, but they definitely told my friend, and I just happened to be there when they told that story. Like, if you're gonna do something, don't have pregnant, do a full pregnant.
Get full pregnant.
Yeah.
I love telling that to like new wrestlers. Like whenever I meet like really, really like right out of wrestling school guys, or even if I see people in the wrestling school or new, I love to tell them that, and they just like they don't get it, but they think it's funny.
It's like and when you think about it too, you're like, I mean, that makes sense. Like nobody just gets half pregnant. Like, you gotta go all the way, right?
He's the
and that's
king
what I
of
think
like
about
saying
it.
some weird stuff.
I've heard a lot of Codyisms, and I've
Yeah.
genuinely looked at myself like, I mean, oddly that makes sense, but why? But yeah, so let me hop over to the best part of the 3 Count podcast, right? Which is the 3 Count podcast 10 count questions. Here's how it works, right? I'm gonna fire off 10 questions at you guys. And whatever your first answer is, that's your answer.
Okay. Cool.
All right. So we put it on the imaginary timer for add pressure. Bing. And in the words of my favorite commentator, Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
Raw.
Okay. Favorite movie?
What was that?
Favorite movie?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Spider-Man.
Okay.
Which
one?
I'm a big Spider-Man guy.
This will be an easy question. Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Yeah, who chooses? My question for you is: does anyone chose DC?
I have people who choose DC.
What are you?
I'm a Marvel fan,
dude.
Like,
of course.
when it comes to the movies, okay. When it comes to the movies,
yeah,
Marvel fan. When it comes to the cartoons, that's a 50-50. When it
Okay.
comes to the comic books, I like DC. I'm not gonna front. Like,
when
the
it comes to
reason-
animations, I'm a huge DC.
yeah, DC animations is like, let's be real. Like, and you could go to like. Pause timer.
Yeah.
You can go toe for toe, right? You can be like, well, X-Men, Superman, right? The Adventures of Superman was really great.
Yep.
The Amazing Spider-Man, right? But then you have the Batman animated series, right? So it's like you have shows that go back and forth, right? And then you have those that really didn't do so well. So you'd be like, well, Iron Man, but like, bro, what? No, no one acknowledges Iron Man. Like Justice League, bro. Like, it's so lit. Move back over. Favorite actor?
Johnny Depp.
Will Ferrell off the top of my head.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Big Will Ferrell guy.
I love you so much.
PlayStation or Xbox?
Xbox.
Favorite cartoon?
Teen Titans.
SpongeBob.
Teen Titan, DC comic. Right.
That was my favorite TV show growing up. You have to go with it.
I'm a big Teen Titan fan. I love Teen Titans Go though. I will be 100%.
Oh, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
The only episode I saw was the sandwich one, where it was like we were on the mission to get like the best sandwich ever, whatever. And I was like,
Like the very yeah.
It was too silly.
Oh man. Apple or Android?
Apple.
Favorite podcast?
Oh, 3 Count podcast, of course.
I mean, it's not like it's like
Listen.
marketed down there at the bottom corner.
You can't disrespect. You can't disrespect Joe Rogan.
Also, can we put a pause on the timer?
Yeah.
I need to go back to that Apple and Android thing. So I made a comparison to wrestling with Apple and Android. You know how like Apple users, like they'll switch to Apple and then they become very pretentious about it?
Yeah.
Casey and I just switched to Boots very recently. We were both kickpad guys. And like I asked someone like, hey, when are you switching to Boots? And then I like sat there for a second. I'm like, oh my God, wrestling boots are the Apple of professional wrestling. Because once people switch to Boots, they're very like, everyone should have Boots. Like everyone needs to look like professional.
Guilty.
And Casey and I were like the worst about it. Like
here we are.
We were kick pads, like slapping on the kicks and everything. Then we switched to Boots and we're like, we're professional wrestlers now.
Yeah, we call everybody kid.
And like,
nice.
That's something I realized this last weekend. I don't know if I'm wrong for that, but like, wrestling boots are the Apple of professional wrestling. Like once you switch over,
No, I agree. 100%. Yeah, that's fire.
I'm gonna let some of my friends know about that too. I'll be like, I'm just gonna look at them too. I was like, and this is why I'm wearing kick pads because I'm never going to Boots.
And until
No
you go
Apple
to
products
Boots,
for me.
then you can't go back.
The Calebism right there.
I wear. So funny thing is, I wear military boots in the ring. Like,
Really?
Oh, really?
yeah, I'll tell you guys about it afterwards. You guys don't get to see all that kind of fun stuff. But nominate one person that you want to see on this podcast.
Just a minute. You know what? Can I do a tag team?
Sure.
Knopside Heroes. I always got to put over those guys. They're such good guys.
Can I throw
And
out
they're
a couple
brothers.
more? Did you just say Hammer Bros?
No, I said
Okay.
no. I just said that the Knopside are brothers.
Oh, I gotcha. I'm gonna throw out some people from Oregon Pro that I was just training at, kind of some Northwesters. There's a tag team called the Flamin' Aces, Spencer Scott and Zay Perez.
Okay.
Have them on. The Hammer Bros, Jack and Sledgehammer. So good. It would be an hour of just. And then our friend Amira too. Those are the Oregon Pro people.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
I guess.
If you get her last though.
Yeah, put her on last.
Okay.
Nice.
And if you can cut anything from the podcast, cut me putting her over.
But last but not least, my favorite question to ask every single person that comes on the show: favorite curse word. You're allowed to curse on the show, by the way, just in case.
Oh, we're allowed to the whole time.
Yeah, the whole fucking time, bro.
So I picked.
Well,
I dropped the
that.
F bomb like the
I
first
was
5
like-
minutes of this.
Oh, that's a tough one. That's the one I've had to think the most about. Like, I feel like fuck's just too easy.
Yeah, I know that one seems like the go-to, so I don't want to say that one.
A good old
honestly,
penis never
I
hurt
don't know.
anyone.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'll say shit. I like saying that. I shit you not. Yeah.
We side note. You know that'll be an after podcast story.
Yeah, no, I'm saying like that's too much more of an after.
We could definitely.
I
share it.
love that you knew exactly where I was going.
It's a great tag team.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, those are all my questions. So the last thing I need from you guys is to let our viewers and our listeners know where they can find you.
Okay. So I'm on Instagram as Caleb_Tenedy, and then Twitter as C_Tenedy, and then _P for some reason. I don't remember why there was a P there. But yeah, my Twitter handle is C_Tenedy_P.
Yeah, if you can find me on Instagram, I was a jabroni and didn't put it in that one. So it's KC_ROXXER because someone already took KC_rocker. And then Twitter or X is rocker_KC. You can find me on there. I post a lot, so that is your warning.
Well, there you go. They gave you your handles. They told you where you could find them. And you know what that means? Like every great part of a wrestling match,
Yes.
we got to take it home. Because this is a 3 Count podcast that's now entering. And I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And, you know, like I said, as your shirt, but it's never about me. It's about who's into the ring. So who's into the ring? You see Caleb Tenedy. You see Casey Rocker. So you guys know what to do. Tune in to the next episode and be there. Or you're really just like
Be square.
listening. Nah, never be square. That's lame. So you're you're gonna be there, or you're really just following us on all of our social media platforms. You're listening to us on Spotify. You're subscribed to our YouTube channel. You're following us on Spotify as well. You're following us on Apple Music. You're even checking us out on iHeartRadio, or I think that's how the tune goes.
Yeah, perfect. It was beautiful.
Sure. You're even buying our merch on prowrestlingtees.com or foryourwear.com. You're checking us out. You're telling your friends about us. You're leaving those little comments. You're leaving those little likes. And then you're sharing this with your friends, your enemies, your family, your pets, because we love all those people too, even if they don't love us. So that, or you're really just kind of waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for that outro. And then you're choosing another episode to listen to. Kawaii. What's going on? It is Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And what we need from you guys is to kind of show some support, right? We want you guys to go to our YouTube channel at the 3 Count Podcast, go on to our Twitch channel, 3 Count Pod, or even our Facebook page, 3 Count Podcast, and just give us a like, follow, subscribe, even give us a comment, right? Do all that cool stuff. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your enemies, right? Or you can even come talk to us and just chat us up, right? Find us on Twitter at 3count_pod. Find us on IG and on TikTok at 3 Count Pod. Go ahead and leave us those comments. We want to hear from all of you guys. We're going to keep putting on videos and stuff like that. We want to keep making this content better, so we want your guys' support. Also, if you guys want to, go support us at prowrestlingtees.com/the 3 Count Podcast, or even find us on foryourwear.com. Give us the support. Show us your guys' love, because we want to give it right back to y'all. So, in the meantime, between time, love y'all.